Okay, let's take a look at the sunflower that Gene Franks did. Now, this is in his book, and you could see there's a lot of shadowing in there. You could see his cross hatching. He likes to do the cross hatching. There's the leaves, the stem, and I'll be doing mine with the blending stump because that's how I like to do it. So we're going to start this, and we're going to take a look at what it takes to start this sunflower. It's I would say it's a little more complex than the bucket, and but nothing to worry about, nothing to be afraid of for sure. It's going to come out just great, I'm sure, for you. So just take your time, because you could always go back and look at the video and see, you know, what's being done. Go back, take a look at yours, see if it looks right to you. All right. So anyway, we're going to start with the HB pencil. Now, the actual sunflower it's a pretty large piece. So again, I'm doing mine fairly small. I'm doing it on portrait again instead of landscape. Because if I do it on my bigger pad, I don't know if the camera here is going to catch the whole thing. So, but you can do yours any size you want. So, looking at the sunflower, let's take another look at that. You know, we talk about basic shapes. Like what is a basic shape of a sunflower? Well, if you really look at it, you've got some basic shapes here that you could start working with. So, one of them is a circle here. You've got a circle here. Now, just to indicate where the petals are going, there's another circle there. Now, let's take a look at these leaves. Roughly a triangle here, another triangle. How about this one? Another triangle right here, and another one here. So, you see, it really is basic shapes, but they're changed and they're altered and they're made to look like a sunflower instead of triangles and circles. So let's take a look at what we got. Well, let's start. I like to start with, now because there's a big leaf down at the bottom, I'm going to start my sunflower up here. So I'm going to do the center. And I'm working with my HB pencil. So there's that center. There's the one above that, around that, I should say. And I want my petals to be about out here. There's a stem. There's a triangular leaf right here, which we will change and make it look more like a triangular leaf. We've got another one here, which is basically a triangle. We've got another one on this side, which is triangular. There is one up here. We could put it in or we could leave it out. It doesn't matter. I mean, it is your picture after all. So there's another big one here that's mainly almost like a shadowy figure in there of a leaf, but that's okay. Now, keep in mind when we're doing the sunflower, even though we've got this outer circle to represent where the petals are going to be, we don't want the petals to all end in the exact same place, because Mother Nature's kind of funny that way. She doesn't do things where, it's absolutely perfect. I mean, every sunflower looks like a sunflower, but is it exactly the same? No, she just doesn't do things that way. So your petals are going to look different than my petals, and they're going to look different than someone else's petals who's doing this with us. But that's okay, because all the sunflowers are a little different. Some will go beyond this point here, and some will go short of this point here. I'm going to adjust my circle a little bit. I want to bring it in a little closer to this. Okay. I know it doesn't look like much of a change, but to me it makes a difference. So now we're going to take a look at our light source. So let's bring that picture back in. I know you've got your photo too, but let's take a look at it. So if this area is casting a shadow here, and this is casting a shadow here, then our light source, and these petals are very light and they're more shadowed here. You see more uh, creases and things in the petals. I would say our light source is coming from pretty much the top, like right about here, coming down and hitting that. There's our light spot, there's our light petal. So that's what I'm going to say. That's where the light source is. So working with that, I'm going to start putting in some petals. Now, the other thing that you need to be careful of when you're putting in petals is that you don't want to start with your petals going this way and then they start going down at this odd angle. No, they need to come out. They're going to bend a little bit, but don't bring them down in this direction. Keep them going out that way. So I'm going to start with, there's a big petal up here on the top. So we're gonna put that one in. There's another one here that breaks that plane. There's another one that comes up behind it. You're gonna see all kinds of different petals here, different shapes. Some that are curving. Now you see I'm breaking that plane. Now what I might do, I'm going to put there's a really long one here. So I'll let that one be kind of within the plane there. And some of these petals start getting pretty wide on the bottom, actually. Sunflowers are huge flowers. I mean, some of them are, 6 feet tall and taller. So they're big. They're definitely a big flower. So now as far as the shape of your petals, like I said, Mother Nature is, well, she's not too particular about doing things exactly the same on every flower. In fact, you're not going to find her doing exactly the same on just about anything, because that's just her way. And that's okay. It does make things interesting. Okay. So just kind of look at your petals, say, okay, where would they go? Which way do they go? Which way are they facing? If you have a few more petals on your sunflower than Gene Franks has on his, or that I have on mine, that's okay. I mean, you don't ever have to worry about that, because that's all part of the flower. In nature, really, Mother Nature is, she's very random in a lot of things. If you were doing grass or so, no blade of grass looks exactly like the next blade of grass. So, but if you were doing a portrait of somebody, that's when you want to get, pretty close, very close, as a matter of fact, because if it doesn't look like that person, well, somebody's going to look at it and say, I don't know, that doesn't look like the guy I know. But when you're doing flowers or anything like that, not a big deal at all. Okay, so I'm going to bring there was a leaf out here, which I kind of like. I like that leaf. Just adds a little something out here. So I'm going to keep that. So right now I'm going to actually start with my blending stump, and I'm going to start putting in a little shadow here, just a little bit, because don't forget our light source is coming this way, and it's lighting the top of this, and you can see that the bottom of it is in much deeper shadow. So maybe I'll do the bottom first then, just to remind myself that's where the light source is coming from, up there. And these centers of the sunflower. I think those are probably the sunflower seeds that form this ring in the middle. So as you start putting the shadow in, you actually start seeing this thing almost raise off the paper and become rounded, because it's rounded. This is flat. So right in here, we're going to put another shadow. And I'm just doing this. This is just a very preliminary shadow. Okay, so this leaf, this is the leaf I just put in. We're going to put a little shadow there. Now, I think it's a good time right now to actually go in and the light circle that we made to indicate where our petals were going to go, I think we can get rid of that now. If you have your petals in, if you don't have your petals in yet, you just leave that and let that guide you. But if you do have your petals in and you're happy with, what you've got, you can go in and you could take that line out of there, because you're really not going to use it anymore once your petals are in. That's all. That's really what the only thing it was for, was to give you a guide as to where to put these petals. So now you see how those petals look just arranged in a circle. Well, we don't see the circle anymore, but we know it was there, and it was just a guide in order to get them in there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to take a little bit of shadow here, maybe on the bottom of some of these petals. There is a little bit of a shadow. And as they start coming around, they get a little more shadowed even. So still with the blending stump. See, I haven't used a pencil yet to do any shadowing, but we're going to do that. Don't worry. We're going to get in there and put some nice shadows in this thing. So here and here, especially at the base of the petal, you'll see there's some shadows right at the base where they come out of this. I don't know what that's called, but I call it a center. I know I'm sure that's not what it's called, but it's got probably a technical name. So this now is casting a shadow on some petals down here, because, again, of our light source. Okay, now our stem is behind the flower, so it comes up and it's pretty much in shadow. I want to mention something else while I'm thinking about it, because sometimes I think about things to tell you, and then we get involved in the picture here, and I forget to tell you. But as you're drawing, and it's happened to me plenty of times, the graphite can spread. So you might want to, if you're working up here, you could have a piece of paper, even a folded piece of paper right here, so that your hand is on the paper and it's not on the graphite smearing what's below. Or because, sometimes you wind up with some graphite on your hand, and as you're moving and getting your picture worked on, you're smearing all kinds of graphite down here. Can be cleaned up with a kneaded eraser. Yeah, can be done. But if you don't get it on there, I guess it's even better if it just doesn't get there to begin with. So a little piece, half a sheet of paper, full sheet of paper, whatever, something just to lean your hand on so that you can work the picture. Now, even though I told you that, I'm actually not going to do it right now, because I'm working much smaller than I normally would on this sunflower. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to take a look at what's going on here. And the sunflower it's got all these little dots. Now I was using the HB. I'm going to switch. And right now I'm going to use my 2B, because I think it'd be better to start with. So here's my 2B. It'll give me a little deeper area here. Although, again, keep in mind that this is where the light is hitting. So we're just putting in some little seeded areas, I guess we can call them. Now, as it starts coming around, you're going to see that there's a lot more shadow coming in here, especially when we get around to this section here. This is almost all shadow down below because of where the light is hitting. And these are just tiny little lines that we're making right now, just to represent what probably is the seeds that are in the center of the sunflower. You can see this building up. It takes a little bit of time. It takes a little patience, that's for sure. You know, art as a whole, it takes practice, and it takes persistence and the willingness to learn what to do. But you know, your art can give back to you too a lot. I've heard so many students say that when they're working on a piece, they get in the zone, as they call it, the zone. And what that is sometimes someone could talk to you and you're concentrating so hard on what you're doing, but enjoying it, that you don't even notice somebody talking to you. Or maybe a phone will ring and you don't hear the phone, and that's being in the zone. And most of the artists that I've taught over the years have always said to me how, whether they work an hour on something or 2 hours on something, whatever the case may be, they always find it so relaxing and so satisfying that whatever went on in the course of their day, whether it was something that aggravated them, or of course their blood pressure to go up, which you know, I have that in my life too. Sometimes things don't go right, and you know, you get frustrated, or blood pressure goes up. And then when you're drawing, it's like you're in your own little world. You are working on your piece. There's nothing that bothers you. You left the rest of the world behind. Your blood pressure is going down. You're just enjoying what you're doing, and that's a great thing. Okay, we're going to blend this just a little bit. So keep that in mind too, that you know, it's really drawing is therapeutic. It really is. It gives you a calmness, and it makes you feel, I don't know, it just makes you feel good. I don't know how else to put it, but it does make you feel good, especially when you really get into it and you're finding a lot of different drawings that you want to do. And I think I had mentioned in one of the videos that what we've got an advantage today is that we all have these phones that have cameras, and so why not use them? I mean, take your phone. Your phone's always with you anyway. When you see something, something that's really cool, you say, "Wow, I'd like to draw that." And you know, you may find that it's not exactly, you know, the best composition to draw. So, but that's your reference photo. You can change that. I had another artist tell me one time when I was, excuse me, I was just, I guess, starting out with art, and she said to me, it's your responsibility as an artist to make the drawing or the painting or whatever it is that you're doing, to make it the best that you can. There may be things in there that you need to eliminate. You can take artistic license with it. If you see something that's really not adding anything to your picture, you can eliminate it. For instance, if you were doing a house portrait for a friend and there was a big old telephone pole, blocking the house, going right up in front of it. What value does that add to the picture? So as an artist, you could take that telephone pole right out of there because you want the picture of that person's house. Things like that. So just a little something to think about. So now, if you notice these little things in here, they're like tiny, tiny little circles almost. That's what they look like to me. I'm gonna have to go to the garden store one day and take a look at some sunflowers and study them. Interesting flower though, pretty flower. So little by little, see, we get this going in there. Then we're gonna come in and deepen that shadow up there. But this is kind of an all gray area. And I'm in there now with the 2B. We're going to go back in with the 4B and maybe even the 6B, just to really pump up this middle section a little darker here and there. And like I mentioned, you know, your sunflower, my sunflower, everybody's sunflower, going to look a little different. No big deal. In fact, that's kind of the fun of art, that, you know, we could look at each other's drawings and see how we've all interpreted something. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with my 4B, and I want to deepen this a little bit right in here, because that's actually a pretty dark area right there. There we go. We'll add some little darker dots in there. Then they come out where they're more into the light. Okay. So how about down here? I think we could add a little depth of shadow in here. A little deeper shadow. Okay. You see, it starts to, you notice how this starts to recede? So we just keep working it, working it, working it. Now, like I mentioned, this one is more complex than the walnut or the bucket. Certainly, the bucket was a much simpler one. I'm going to go back in with my 2B now. I'm just going to add some of these lines in there. I don't want them as dark as these. I may darken this even more. I think I could use it, but right now I'm going to just go in and put a few more lines in there. Now this section is casting a shadow on our petals. So we're going to go in here where the petal comes in. And we'll start seeing shadows come into the petals. This one's going to take a little while to do, because there really is a lot involved with the sunflower. It's a large flower, first of all, and there's a lot going on. Now, as we come up more to the top, there's not that much of a shadow, not as much on the petals as there is down here, because this is casting a shadow on the petals. And some of the petals are behind other petals. So that's a whole other thing, see? You got shadows there, where a petal falls behind one, like this petal. I'm going to put behind this petal and let the shadow of this petal fall onto that petal. And put that kind of in the background there. So, art is an interesting thing because I just like the way it helps you see things. Excuse me. That you really do start to see things so differently. And I hope that you've been looking at things around your home, around your neighborhood, and looked at, you know, how things look different to you now than they did before. Now that you're looking at things as an artist. This is that branch stem, really. Not really a branch. Okay, so let's take, I'm going to go in with my 6B. I think I'm going to sharpen it first because it needs a little bit. I've used it up pretty good with the bucket. So I'm going to have a nice little point on there. And I want to go in here and actually deepen that shadow even more that's falling on the leaves. Let it just fade out as it comes around. Now, if this were in bright sunlight, which let's assume that it is, that's why we're getting a deep shadow in there. You know, obviously when the sun is really bright and shining on something, it gives you really, really dark shadows and bright light areas. It's very dramatic. On a cloudy day, you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't barely see the intensity of a shadow as you do on a bright sunny day. So we're going to just bring this around here a little bit. Good old blending stumps, yeah. I just like it so much. I use it all the time. I actually have to get a new set of blending stumps where it's the 2 or 3 different sizes because I use them so much. I like the different sizes because of the different places that you'll be using a blending stump. So we're just going to do that. Throw this into shadow here a little bit more. Now you see that starting to build up and look like it's almost standing off the paper. So let's take a look at some of these petals down here. So I'll put a couple of shadows in here where the petals are and start bringing them out. You see, let them stand out a little bit. So there's one that'll be behind that one. There's another one that's going to be behind. This one will be throwing a shadow on there. Now as we get to the top, once again, the shadows are not as intense because they are in the sunlight. So we're just going to put some light shadows in there, like this. And as we get down to the bottom petals, you'll see that shadow starting to intensify. Okay. All right. So far, so good, huh? Okay. Now, let's take a look at, oh, you know, there's another leaf up in here that I didn't put in there, but we're going to do that. I'm going to just put it in there like that. And I think it'll add a nice shape within the shadow in the back of this sunflower. It'll just add something to look at. Do you want to make your drawings as interesting as possible? You know, that, you know, when someone else is looking at it, it holds their interest, you know, that they're looking at it saying, oh, wow, look at that. Look at this. Look at what he or she put in here. That's really cool. So that's what you want. I mean, you want to capture the attention of the viewer and let them appreciate what you've done because, you know, it's a lot of work. So now we're going to go in and we're going to do part of this stem. We want to get some stem and some leaves in here because we've got to put shadow behind it and it's going to affect the petals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this leaf here and we're going to bring that down that way. We've got kind of this shape here. So there we go. Now, this big triangular leaf that was down here, it's we're gonna shape it a little bit more based on our reference photo. And again, it doesn't have to be just like, you know, just like mine, just like Jean Frank's. You know, it's your leaves, it's your flower, you know, it's going to look different. Everybody's is going to look different. So we'll bring out a leaf here. We'll use the blending stump a lot in this one. And there's another leaf over here. So let's just throw that in there. Leaves are good to have in your drawings. So let's go back in here to the stem. And I noticed that my stem is this stem is probably a little lower than the one actually in Jean Frank's drawing. Frank's, that doesn't sound right, but I guess that I have to say it that way. But that's okay. Again, it's my drawing. His was his drawing. Mine is mine. So now we're going to put a little shadow into here. This one is got some shadow, and it's going to have petals coming across it. Okay, so blending stump time. Let's take this stem, deepen it a little bit more because this one is really in shadow a lot. So we're going to bring that down, and this one is in shadow here. We've got a stem coming up this way, and we've got this leaf is showing a lot of shadow because of, you know, the leaf bends and turns and that sort of thing. So we're just going to throw in some shadow in there. This leaf is pretty much in light quite a bit. Okay, how about this one? This one's got some dark shadow in it. Yeah, so we'll do it with the blending stump first, and then we'll go in and we'll deepen it even more. We'll put a little shadow in here up against some of our petals. Okay, let's take the blending stump now. Oh, you know what? Let's take our 4B pencil and really deepen this shadow in here a little bit more. Now the shadow that's on this leaf is probably what the petals are casting on it. Because the leaf is, you know, not perfectly flat, it distorts the shadow of the petals. This one up here has some jagged edges. So we'll just put them in, and then we'll deepen this a little bit. And up here, so that these edges show up against a lighter area, we're going to put the other part of that leaf there. Now, I think that I want to curve this a little bit more. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of these petals that are up top here. And I'm going to take my 2B, because I don't want to go too dark now. These are the ones that are in light. They've got a lot of light coming on them, so there is shadows. There's still shadows, even though they're in light, but not as much as we're going to have down here. So gently, gently with the 2B pencil, we're putting in some shadows where the leaves are, they have those little creases in them. And there's a softness to those leaves, so we definitely want to make sure that we do see that softness. This is where that leaf is showing through there. Now this petal, see, as we start coming down now, we're going to start getting more and more shadow on these petals, because they are in shadow. And we can deepen some of the shadows here as it hits the petal below it. We start building it, building it, building that shadow, building that dark areas, making sure we're maintaining our light areas. Now here's where some of the shadows are going to get fairly deep. All the way up to probably, roughly about here. I start seeing some shadows lightening up as they come up here, but from here down, they're pretty intense. And we're going to use the blender on these too, because they're going to need it in here. So I'm going to go a little deeper. Actually, with this shadow on this leaf, I think it can go a little darker. There we go. That's better. Now, I'm going to take that blending stump again. I'm going to start putting some shadow in these babies here. See how that's working? See? Those leaves are getting that leaves. Well, they're not really leaves, they're petals. They're getting that shadowed look. They're getting those ups and downs in the petal. We'll hit it a little bit up top, but not much, because again, that's our brighter area, and we want to keep it that way. Let me hit this leaf a little bit, because I only did it with the pencil. So let's hit on that with the blending stump. Let's hit that, and see if we can spread that out a little bit more. This shadow in here, smooth it out a little bit more. There. Okay. This is going to go darker, especially because it's up against this edge right here. So again, why do we see this? Why do we see this leaf against that one? Because this one's light, that one's darker. Darker because of a shadow. So I'm going to take my 6B now, and I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to darken this even more. Now there's going to be some shadow in here, so we won't really see an outline, but I'm going to darken some of this so we really don't outline it. You know how I feel about outlines. I prefer not to have them. So now this leaf comes against this one, and that's how we see that edge. So this is a bit of a shadow up in here. This leaf has a lot of shadow being cast on it from, you know, the flower, other leaves, a lot of things are really affecting this leaf right here. So we're just going to put some shadow in here and put those points in there that make that leaf the leaf that belongs with the sunflower. We talked about that too, you know, making something look like it's supposed to. You know, if it is a sunflower leaf, then we should have a leaf that looks like a sunflower. Leaves for, you know, roses are very specific. They don't look like leaves of other flowers. So again, that's that observing, looking at what it is that you're doing, trying to make it look as natural as possible. And we're going to put just a little bit of shadow in here, and we've got some veins coming out from this leaf here. So we'll do a little more shadowing there, but right now that's good. And we'll bring this stem down here. And we'll put the shadow along here. There we go. Okay, now let's go back in here. Let's take a look. I'm going to blend this a little bit more right up in here. Just hit that a little bit more, bring that down into here. Now these petals here, we've got one coming up behind here. So this is in shadow here. That's the bottom part of this petal is showing through here. And this petal is coming up this way. So Now you'll see that as I'm doing something, I notice something and I go back to it, and I kind of go back and forth. I don't always stay in the same place for forever. you know, I do go back and forth because I notice it, and I want to take care of it while I'm thinking about it. So I just want to blend this leaf a little bit more. That's better. See, that's softer. Gives it a softer feel. Okay. All right. We're getting there. We are getting there. Now, one of the things that's going to really make a difference here in this sunflower is when we start putting shadowing behind these petals. And you know what? I think it's time to start doing that. So I'm going to take my 6B, and I'm going to start up here. And I think right now I'm going to take my own advice and put a sheet of paper under my hand, because we've got a lot of graphite right down in here. And if I start working up here, my hand's going to be all over the place there, and it's going to really mess it up. So we're going to look at what we got going here. So we got this petal here. And I'm just going to shape that a little bit more. Go put that one in there. Okay. And this one. And the reason I'm doing the edge now like that is because we're going to have a dark shadow in there. So this edge is going to disappear within the shadow. So I don't have to worry about it too much. But I do want to have it in there. So, see, when I start to put a shadow in there like this, you don't see the edge of the petal anymore. You just see the petal. You're not seeing a line, is what I should say. The line that you did outline the petal in is disappearing into the shadow. So we want to just bring that up a little bit. Let me bring that down this way so you can see what I'm doing. And start fading it out, as always, as it goes up. We'll start fading it away. We're going to put more of a shadow in here. We're going to bring that shadow probably all the way out to here. So we're going to do it fairly dark along this leaf, along this petal. And in here, in between these two petals. Okay. And then we'll let it fade out there. And fade a little bit here. Now, what about here? Okay, we need to fade, bring that up too. Fade. Up. Fade. Start to fade again. Now, how about this top of this leaf here? Yeah, we want to do a little something there because we have our outline. We don't want it, not really. We really don't want it. So, see, we make the shadow create the outline. So, see your petals starting to stand out now? Now, we need more shadow here. We're going to put a little bit more here under this leaf. Now, I'm still working with the 6B, but I'm going fairly light, light pressure with the 6B. Not as much as I did right in there. We'll take a look at it, as it progresses and see. It might need a little bit more shadow. Maybe not. We'll see. As I had mentioned another time, it's a give and take kind of thing. You're putting graphite in, you take graphite out. It's just how it is. So let's blend this and see what we got going on here. I always like to see what it looks like when it's blended. I love that look. which is why I do it all the time. To me, it's just, I don't know, it's just cool. I like it. I mean, I like the other methods too, and I like when, to see other artists who do different methods. But, for me, it's just, I like this, and so that's what I'm showing you. But, like if you want to, I mentioned it before, if you want to, do it a different way, I would never, ever say, no, don't do that. Especially if it's, if it's something that like blending, you want to crosshatch, fine. You want to blend it in a different way, fine. Go for it. Because these are your pictures. You're developing your style. That's exactly what you're doing. You're developing your style. Okay, we're going to blend this here. And between that petal down to these petals. And this was a little lighter than right there. But not too light. And we'll get a little lighter in here. We'll go a little lighter because it's the light is affecting the shadow behind the sunflower, so it's not black all the way around. It's going to get darker as we come down into the underneath the petals here, and we still got more work to do on these. We've got these lines we've got to put into those ups and downs of the petals. So I'm going to take my 6B again, and I'm going to come down into here now, where we have this branch. I'm going to make the branch even darker yet. And then coming out here, I'm gonna go fairly dark. I'm using my 6B still. But I don't want to go too dark against this leaf. Just dark enough to get rid of that outline. I'm going to lighten this up fairly quickly in here and come in here where the stem is a little darker than the background, but then instead of we're going deep and then lifting up on the pencil, I started lightly and now I'm pressing down on the pencil. So we're darkening it again as we go down through here. So a little lighter against the stem itself, so that kind of stands out. A little lighter here. I'm putting very light pressure on this right now because I'm going to blend it anyway. And then here, right here, it gets pretty dark too. So here's that leaf. So right along that leaf, it's pretty dark. So we're going to go in there with the 6B and really darken that up and lighten it as it gets to the stem, so that the stem doesn't disappear in the shadow. We still want it to be seen. So there it is. Still there, still with us. Okay, let's take our blending stump again. Come back, start up here. Take a look, see what this looks like. And let's go down here now. We want it a little lighter against the stem, and then we go a little darker into here. And then it can lighten up again. A little lighter near the stem, a little darker. and it's kind of throwing shadows around, so we don't have to worry about the shapes in here particularly, because they're from, you know, leaves, petals, what have you. Yeah, okay, so you can still see our stem. You can see it here. Okay, let's take a look at some of these petals here. I'm going to use my blending stump really to put a shadow in there that makes them look like they're actually up and down. And this is one of those things where you still want to maintain that soft feel because they're petals of a flower. So they don't get too hard looking. Nothing like, you know, what we had with that bucket. You know, that was a hard surface. These flowers are not really a hard surface. Okay, so we have a little bit of shadow. I'm going to go deeper in there. I can see from my reference photo that I could go deeper in there. All right, now we're going to get some shadow in here too. So we're going to go back with the 6B, and I'm going to sharpen it again because my 6B is getting used up pretty good here. It definitely gets a workout on a drawing like this. Okay, so I'm going to come back into here underneath this leaf. And just outlining it so I know where to put my shadow, really. See, now the outline's going to be gone. You're just not going to see that anymore. So, move this down a little bit. And again, we're going to let it fade out. But when it's close to the petal here, this shadow's right up against the petal, it's going to be dark to let those petals show up. Yeah. This is still the 6B. Pretty good pressure on it now, and then easing up. And then we're going to blend it back out again. So easing up. Now, one of the things I always told my students, I don't know if I told you guys yet, but when you're doing dark areas like this, I noticed a lot of students in the beginning, they were kind of really gun shy with the darkness, you know. It was like afraid to put it in there. And I always told them, don't be afraid of the dark. If you need to go dark, go dark. But look at where you're putting the dark. Look at where it's going. Make sure that it's going in the right place and that you're not maybe overdoing it. I did have someone who was, I forget, we might have been working on the walnut or the bucket, one of the two. And I was talking, you know, I said the same thing, don't be afraid of the dark. And I had this one artist, he was brand new, and yeah, he put shadows, I mean, such dark shadows all over. It was like his bucket was in the dark. I couldn't hardly see the bucket, so we had to go back in with the kneaded eraser and say, okay, let's take some of that out. We kind of went overboard a little bit there, which can happen, but I don't want you to be too shy about putting dark areas when they're needed, because there are times when they are needed, and it can make or break your picture. I know I've seen some pencil artists that were so afraid of putting dark areas in, really dark areas, that the pencil piece came out looking very light. It was very light. It just didn't have any oomph to it, really. It was too light. And that can happen, you know, I mean, obviously it can happen, but just be aware that you do want to have some dark areas. You need some dark areas. If you've got light acting on something, you've also got shadow acting on something, just how it is. Okay, so we're going to go over here now. We're going to blend this dark area. I'm going to blend it out very gently, just pressing very lightly now. You get the feel of that too. You might already have gotten the feel of it. You've done enough drawings now, I'm sure. You've done the walnut, done the bucket. And now, the sunflower. Okay. So now we see how our petals are standing out against this dark area. Now, the other thing that's going to make them stand out, I got my 6B again. I'm going to come in here underneath where a petal is overlapping another petal. And it's important to create that overlap with shadow. And just looking at petal by petal, that's all. Just go petal by petal. Take a look at what's going on. And they start to come alive, don't they? Now, you'll notice sometimes that in the reference photo even, you'll see it, in between petals, like right in here, say, there's a little bit of a triangular area. That's like a separating area for the petals. It separates the petals. So it's good to have that in there. You don't need it on every single one, but you could have it on a few just to show that that's that area. Up here too, you know, where that area would be kind of dark, even though this is where the greatest concentration of light is. But when the petals are crossing each other, right next to each other, you'll still see some shadowed areas in there. Now, I want to take the blending stump here, and I want to add a few more of those lines that we see on petals. Most flowers do have that in their petals. They're not just flat, there's some movement to them. Oh, see, they really do start to come alive. I'm going to take my 2B, if I could find it. Here it is. I knew it was here somewhere. Okay, I'm just going to go in here a little bit deeper. I just want to distinguish these petals. I don't have to go in as deep as a 6B. I just want to make it a little darker. Now it's that leaf up there. Okay. Now we can go a little darker in here too, in between these two petals. Make them stand out a little bit more. There we go, see? And just touch somewhere, sometimes just on the edge, just to separate these petals a little bit. And just with the 2B, giving a little line here, coming out of the shadow. Adds a little more natural look to the petal itself. Now we got to do something here too, because this shadow has to come down into here, so we're going to do that next. But I just wanted to finish up a little bit on these petals here. These can have a little harder lines, let's call it, because they're in shadow. But I'm putting very little pressure on it. This is again the 2B, and I'm not pressing hard at all. Just adding enough. I'm going to just put a little bit on the side of this leaf too, because I think it needs a little something on with these petals here. We need a little darkness against them to let them stand out a little more. These guys right here. And again, as you get going and you're, really moving along in your art journey, you're going to see how you look at something, you can see it right away. You're going to say, oh yeah, I definitely need more shadow there because I need something to stand out more. So it's a good way to do it. Okay, let's add some more lines here, little lines. And this is still the 2B. But just doing a little bit more work on it can make it come to life a little bit more. And you want your petals, to stand out against the dark areas, so don't be afraid to put that shadow in there. See how they start to actually look like they're overlapping each other? Because in your drawing, they are. I see, it's coming along, huh? Flowers are nice to do. They're kind of fun to do. They're interesting because they're all different. There's so many different kinds of flowers. Roses are interesting to do because they're, how their petals twist around each other and all that. That could be challenging to do a rose, but I'm sure at some point in your art career you will be doing a rose. Someone may say to you, hey, can you draw a picture of a rose for me? Because they like roses. So, sure. You do it. No problem. So here this stem is a little bit lighter on this side right here. So we're going to go a little darker with the shadow. And then again, kind of ease up and ease up and ease up a little bit there. And come down some more. And we're going to bring this shadow right down to this big leaf here. And let the lightness of that leaf, lightness in color and value, stand out against this shadow. Okay, we'll be blending that too. So now we're going to do a little bit lighter here as we come across this area of this leaf, but still deep enough shadow where you could see the lightness of that leaf standing out. When we blend it, it'll look different yet. We'll be blending that in a matter of a couple of minutes here. Let's see, you know what? I think we could put, well, maybe just with the blender, we could put a little bit, in here on this side of the leaf. Just a little bit of shadow. Maybe down here too. Now, let's take a look at this dark area here. Let's start blending that. Smooth that out a bit. Now we see what I was saying earlier about when we were doing the walnut, about that lady who had the walnut the size of a watermelon. When you start shadowing and blending and doing all this, and you have a gigantic drawing that you're working on, it takes a lot of graphite, a lot of blending, a heck of a lot of work, but that's okay. I mean, if that's what you want to do. Some people, I've seen artists that really work big. I mean, I've seen some gigantic charcoal drawings that were huge. And yeah, although the work is a lot, obviously the artist enjoyed it. And what is this all about anyway? About your enjoyment, about you getting something out of this. Personal enjoyment, satisfaction, pride, all of these things. And as your drawings start to take shape, you definitely can take pride in your drawings. Absolutely. And you should. Okay. Going to blend this out very gently, a little more. As a matter of fact, remember I used my finger on something there? I don't know if it was the walnut or what, but I'm going to do the same thing here. And I'm going to let this edge, see, look at how that smooths that right out. Fingers are good. They really are. You don't want to touch the rest of your drawing with that finger, though, because, as you can see, your finger starts looking like a blending stump, which is basically what you used it for. Okay, so just move this down here. There we have our sunflower. That's basically it. I mean, you can go in. You could always work it a little bit more if you feel the need. If you want to come in and just add a couple more little lines in it in the petals, that's up to you. There comes a time when you have to look at your work and say, you know what, it's done. I have to put my pencils down and just accept it, that it's done. That's it. Sometimes you can overwork something. I think you'll know it when you see it. So, don't worry about that either. If it happens, it happens. It happens to the best of us. It's happened to me. It's happened to other artists that I know, that I've talked to. So it's not the end of the world, that's for sure. What it is a learning experience. Look at any mistake that's made as a learning experience, not a mistake. Think of it as a learning experience. And because the next time you draw something, you're going to know, don't do that. You did it last time, didn't like it. Okay, got to do something different. All right. So there we are. There we have our sunflower. And I hope you enjoyed doing a sunflower. I enjoyed doing it with you. And I'll see you next time. And we'll see. We're going to do something interesting. Maybe we'll do a still life. We'll see. This is a still life too, but maybe we'll do a different type of still life. I'll find something that I think might be interesting, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again for coming. Take care.